Welcome to Ordinary Teachers and Students, where we get to hear teachers and students tell us their extraordinary stories. My hope is that through this podcast, ordinary teachers from around the world can relate to the stories they hear and get some timely suggestions and ideas. My name is Alan Cheng, and I'm a secondary school teacher in the UK, a life coach, and a former university lecturer. My mission is to make the education system a better place for all. Today, I'm delighted to invite Alastair onto our podcast. Alastair is a first-year marine biology student at University of Chester, having come from an animal management course in Kendal College. She spends her time off as a self-taught artist and takes keen interest in all forms of obscure natural life, which is the reason why she started the university course. She hopes to go on to be a researcher, and she believes there is always a time and place to make a difference in the modern world. While teaching Alastair in the past year, I could feel Alastair's passion for wildlife, especially the obscure ones. Let's welcome Alastair. How are you doing today?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I'm very excited to talk to you. So anything you want to add to that intro in terms of what types of obscure natural life or wildlife you like, for example? Or would that be too broad of a question?
I'd be here all day, but I can try and summarize it for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Is if you showed it to someone and said, "Look at this thing, it's so cute," and they gave you a funny look, that's probably the sort of thing that I'd be interested in. So it's not the big eyes, big nose, cute seal things. It's like the little salps and siphonophores and sea pens and things that I think are quite adorable. I like the boneless ones, which is a very weird sentence.
Yeah. Is there a time where you can kind of really pin down where your passion for this area started?
This is something I've been told my whole childhood, but when I was 4, I remember I had this enormous blue book of marine animals and like marine stuff, and I was obsessed with it, and I took it into show and tell, and I drew one of the organisms, which is a little zooplankton, and that was my whole show and tell, and I think since then it's sort of stuck with me.
That's interesting. Would it be a good guess if one of your parents or someone in your family is also really into marine animals or mammals or that kind of?
Sort of. I mean, my dad, he used to do diving, so he used to go around America and such, and go dive across like sandbar areas.
And
stuff with all the sharks. He really liked to see sharks, so
interesting.
There's a lot of that in his history, but I don't think he would be. He's not really sciencey, so it's just that.
Okay, sure. If I kind of take you back to your primary school time, then, like, how would you describe your primary school life? What you remember of it, of course. I mean, it's quite a long time ago for you now.
I don't remember a lot of it. I think it was. I remember most of it outside of the classroom because that's when you actually care. Because a lot of it was just playing around. I was very. I used to run around in the playground and pretend I was a dragon. So
Why a dragon, may I ask? Why not other creatures?
I mean, there were other creatures. I was sometimes I remember, I think it was an Arctic fox and such like that, because I used to play little video games and there was like characters in it. But dragons were just the one. I was obsessed with the How to Train a Dragon series, and at a very young age. Dragons.
Yeah, sure. So you remember a lot of the outdoors time and a lot of time just playing around outside.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember some of the teaching stuff as well. If you want to go over that, I'm assuming.
No, but maybe generally it seems like it's quite a happy time for you in primary.
It had its downsides, I'm afraid. When I wasn't playing around and like in the classrooms, I had hearing impairment and they didn't really treat it very well.
Oh, right, okay. And what happened then? So did you only find out yourself, or did you later find out? Or
I only found out because this is a funny story. I would come from school and like school had an assembly. It was a very Christian school. So you'd be assembly, you'd have some priest or pastor come in. You'd be like, "Hello, everyone," and you'd reply, "Hello, everyone." But I heard it as "Hello, Edry Horn." so I thought that was his name, and I came back from school and I was like, oh my god, Edry Horn did this did this really cool assembly, and my mum was like, oh, that's nice. And then she met him and was like, oh, are you Edry Horn? What is that, Welsh? And he was like,
No.
my
Oh,
name's
that's hilarious.
yeah. So that was how they found out I couldn't hear properly.
Okay.
And that was eventually sorted, but it was a whole process, and I'm
Mm.
surprised that my school didn't do anything for it. There was I don't remember, maybe they did, but I don't remember any. Like, I was always sat at the back of the class as well. I was sat
Okay.
because I was
Yeah.
I was definitely an undiagnosed child with something.
Mm,
They
mm,
sat
mm,
me
mm,
with
mm,
all of the kids,
mm,
who were
mm.
misbehaving and
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah, yeah.
and like I would just there's nothing I can do there. I couldn't hear, and I was being
Yeah, yeah.
distracted by other kids. I was just shoved
Mm,
aside. It was so
mm,
so sad that I just didn't have any sort of support in any of it.
mm, mm,
Um,
mm.
yeah, there was always a sort of favoritism in school, so
Right.
there's a bit, yeah.
So the teacher would put the students he or she liked closer to the front, would you say?
I mean, I think it was a seating plan, like typical, but
Mm,
only the kids with, like, say, like autism or something, or like
mm,
special needs, or
mm,
maybe were a bit distracting or difficult, they would just
mm.
put them in a corner. Like, not really in a corner, but like they would just put them at the back.
Like, yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay. You would expect, like, I would do the opposite. Like, I would put those closer to the front so I can take better care of them.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, I just didn't get any of that. I was always sort of expected to do it on my own, like sort it out and figure
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
out
yeah, yeah.
myself. And it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, well, you didn't do a good
No, no,
job
no,
at the start.
no, I get what you mean. And it's interesting because, like, obviously you think about it now as an adult. Would you say back then you're already quite aware? Like, would you say at the time you're like kind of, oh, why am I put at the back kind of thing? Or did you not really make too much of it?
I mean, I was friends with the kids there, so
Yeah.
I'd been put with them and I made friends with them. So I don't think I questioned it. I was too young.
Yeah.
Uh, I only questioned it when it was stuff like there were loads of plays that we did, and
Mm,
I
mm,
was always stuck on just choir or background, like every single time. It wasn't that I wasn't talented, right? I have the voice of an
I
angel,
know.
I promise
Yeah.
you. But
But yeah, I
I
can
was always
imagine.
auditioning, and I put my whole
Mm,
heart and soul into it. And they just every
mm,
single time picked the same five kids. So I think it was just that
mm.
there was a lot of favoritism and
Yeah, yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. I can
yeah,
imagine, and you can feel it definitely as kids as well. Okay,
yeah.
so that's your primary school life. How about the transition to secondary? So was secondary very different for you, or was it more of the same? Would you
I was
say?
very different because I got
Mm.
bullied on my first day because I tried to play as a dragon.
Oh no.
I know. I mean, you're a little kid and you've been used
Mm,
to like um,
mm,
playing,
mm, mm,
pretend, and
mm,
then you suddenly thrown into somewhere where if you do that, you're going to get bullied. So
mm, mm.
I think that's a normal experience for a lot of kids who've gone from primary school
Yeah,
being like
of
that.
course.
Yeah.
That first year is always very tough, like trying to understand how the whole secondary school game works, right?
Yeah. My school was very large, and I always got lost as well. So that was one of
Mm.
the things that
That happens a
was
lot, yeah.
incredibly difficult for me to get around, was finding the rooms, because they give you
Mm,
a timetable, they'd have the room number, your
mm.
typical little laminate sheet, and you
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
go and find it. But I couldn't. I just struggled to find it. I have to ask like
Mm,
someone, but I was too scared.
mm,
Social anxiety was really bad.
mm, mm, mm,
Obviously,
mm.
after the first day,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I didn't really want to talk to anyone. But
Mm,
there was a lot of like me coming in late and explaining, and the teacher just being angry at me. And I'm like, I'm
mm,
sorry, I couldn't
mm.
find the room. There's like 10 million of them, and the
Mm, mm,
room,
mm,
like
mm.
the building, is built like a
Yeah.
labyrinth.
Mm,
So
mm,
I just
mm, mm.
struggled, and it took me a very long time to actually know where the rooms were.
Yeah,
You'd
yeah.
think I'd pick it up after like 1 week, 2 weeks, but it took
Mm,
me 2 years. So,
mm, 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 mm,
yeah,
mm. Okay. For the bullying thing, then was it something that persisted, or did it kind of just go away after a bit?
it scooted away. I was very lucky that I didn't really do anything that got
Mm,
attention on me. I was very
mm,
away and like in the corner and just did my own thing, and no one really gave me an issue for it.
mm, mm,
I
mm.
don't think bullying was really a problem
Okay,
for
okay.
like the majority of my school life. I think it was only an issue when I got involved with people who were bullied. So
Mm.
like I love my friends, but there were some people who I probably shouldn't have been friends with that I got bullied for being friends with. And then
Oh,
I
yeah,
was,
yeah.
oh, okay, right. So
That's always a
it's
tough one.
not, yeah, it's not like they're bullying you for no reason. I'm sure that did happen. That's
Mm,
secondary school, but
mm,
where there was a lot of the bullying I experienced had like
mm.
it made sense to me when I grew up, and I was just like, okay, it's not
Right, right.
haunting me. I'm fine.
Okay, okay. Any other highlights from your secondary school life? I mean, that's much more recent, so I'm sure you remember more of it.
Yeah, there was a lot to it. To be honest, it was probably the obviously it's the time I remember the most because it's like what 7 years.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
7 years in secondary. That's a lot of stuff that's happened, but I got better support for like my learning troubles, but I wasn't
Mm,
really given any at all at the same time. Um,
mm.
so at first I was struggling. My hearing was fine by then; it was gone by the
Okay.
time I was 8. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's all sorted. But I still
Mm,
struggled with sometimes I don't hear people properly, or I'm not
mm.
able to pay attention, or something along the lines of that,
Okay.
and or I just didn't understand. But
Mm,
they didn't. The first couple of years, I don't feel like anybody really explained anything to me. I felt very
mm,
out of the loop, so I just
mm,
always asked my friend every
mm,
single year and every single
mm.
class. I just turned to my friend and be like, "So what are we doing?"
Yeah.
And it was always something that I feel like they were probably annoyed at me for because it's like, "Oh, I'm stealing their work, I'm copying them," but
Right.
nah, I just didn't know what was happening.
Mm,
And then later on, there was in like year, I think 9, end of year 9 to
mm.
year 11 was when I actually got some support because of like,
Yeah.
but that was only because there was actually issues at home that school were
Oh, right.
aware of,
Mm, 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 mm.
and like and then they were just then they had to
Okay. Okay.
check in on me. But when I had
Mm,
asked before, like
mm,
when I had gone up to teachers to try and ask, I was always just seemed I felt like I was seen as just like um, somebody who wasn't really very engaged in their classes because I couldn't
mm,
couldn't
mm, mm,
yeah
mm.
focus on what was being asked of me.
When you say lack of focus, was it anything to do with like ADHD, like attention deficit?
I don't know. I think so. I haven't gotten a diagnosis yet, but it seems to just
Mm,
line up. I'm not going to self-diagnose, but
mm,
it's something
mm,
where it's like, yeah, it would make sense. I could live without the
mm,
diagnosis, but it would explain a lot in my childhood,
mm.
I think.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Like, and because obviously, I guess you're still kind of getting to the grips with who you are and why you do certain things at certain times, right? I'm also curious about like kind of choosing subjects. Obviously, with you now doing marine biology, was it something that was in your mind, like let's say all the way back in year 9 when you're choosing your GCSEs, and then again year 11 when you're choosing your A-level subjects?
No, actually, I was going to go down a whole other path. I really wanted to do psychiatry for a very long
Mm,
time. So that was
mm.
something I was going to do. But then I realized that included med school and stuff. And I
Ah,
just, no, thank you. I can do STEM, but not med school and stuff like that. I think that would be too
mm.
much for me. But
Mm, mm, mm,
that wasn't really something like a dream killer because I had loads of, I was very indecisive. I really wanted to
mm,
get all sorts of things growing up, and I didn't really know what would
mm,
come of it. So by the time year 11 came around and everyone was choosing their colleges and stuff, I was
mm.
completely lost. And I had to talk to um, one of the people who helped with the
Yeah, careers.
careers
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm, mm,
She was an angel. She loved me to bits. She was so
mm,
nice.
mm, mm,
And I came up to her, I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And she was like, oh, I'll come and see you later. And like, we'd bump into each other a couple of times, and the conversation would go along the lines of, "Oh, I can help you find a school. You can come
mm,
meet me at this time, and then we'll talk about it or something." And
mm,
so
mm,
I would go and like talk, and she was like, "Oh, you can go to this college. They have a marine
mm,
biology course. I think that would be more of your thing."
mm,
And I was
mm,
like,
mm,
"Okay." And she said that like there was a one of the top marine biologists in the UK was
mm.
teaching there. So I was like,
Oh,
"You got me
wow.
sold. You got me sold." I
Wow.
was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Yeah, lovely woman."
Okay.
So I went to do that. It
Mm.
wasn't really a marine biology course in college. It was an animal care one,
Okay.
but she said it was taught by a marine biologist at some
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
point. So
Yeah, yeah.
that was sort of what,
Yeah,
yeah, I
sure, sure.
concluded.
And did that live up to your expectation then in terms of the content, in terms of what you did in the course?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was definitely one of the best times after secondary, because secondary it's like you have to attend it, you don't want to be
Mm,
there, the lessons are usually boring.
mm,
Sometimes obviously I mean you get to pick it like later on in year 10 or
mm,
whatever, but
mm,
there's
mm,
still like maths and whatever, you don't want to do
mm.
that.
True.
um, so college was a lot better in the fact that I was doing something that I actually cared about.
Yeah.
I could pay attention easier. I could move around. Like you could get up in the class, you could go to the bathroom, you could move your
Yeah.
chair
Yeah,
to
yeah,
sit
sure.
front, you could ask stuff. It was a lot more engaging, and I didn't feel like I was just sat in front of
Mm.
basically a screen and told to sit there and stare at paint drawing. You
Yeah.
know,
Mm,
like
mm, mm.
that's sort of the feel. It was a lot more refreshing, especially after COVID. Because
Sure, sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, if we move on to the main part of the podcast then. So basically what we normally do is we do a deeper dive into an area about school, about education that you're particularly interested in talking about. Was there something on your mind that you wanted to discuss?
Um, I don't think so. I think the only thing that I focused on was just like accessibility and such, and like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
support from teachers. I think that's probably what I was going for. So
Mm, mm.
we can focus on that. I don't mind talking about something else though.
No, no,
But
no, that's brilliant. So do you want to tell us why you are particularly interested in this particular area? Like obviously I can guess based on what you mentioned already, but if you just tell us a little bit about that in terms of why.
the accessibility thing.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. Um, well, it's always been something where if I look back on it, it's like uh, I feel a little bit cheated out of some things. Like I feel
Mm,
cheated out of like a healthy education environment. Whereas, because especially now I have better support, obviously in uni.
mm,
Uni's been great. Uni was,
mm,
you
mm,
know, I
mm.
feel really happy that I went here. But
Yeah.
um, there was a lot in even college where if I went to see somebody about something, I just felt really put to the side
Mm,
um, because I wasn't. It kind of sound a bit odd, but I wasn't severe enough for like people to pay attention to, even though
I
I was
know what you
still,
mean. Yeah.
yeah, like I wasn't, I was able to listen and I was able to write and do the work, but I wouldn't do it the quality that I could if I was
Yeah.
able to
Mm-hmm,
be
mm-hmm,
engaged with it. So it was something where if I look back, it's like, oh, I maybe wouldn't have nearly failed every single
mm,
course and every
mm,
single
mm, mm.
lesson. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you feel like you were kind of in the middle, right? So you, like you said, you weren't severe enough to immediately need attention, but it was serious enough to affect your learning, like you said, right?
yeah.
Are there any areas of accessibility that you feel are particularly neglected right now, but just based on your own experience, of course?
Probably just like one-to-one engagement. I understand it's very difficult as a teacher to go around a class of maybe 30 students
Yeah.
and make sure that each one is doing okay. But
Mm,
it would be nice that there would be a sort of so my year did like my school did like a head of year and you
yeah.
talk to them.
Mm,
But that was sometimes really scary, especially if you didn't like them and especially
mm,
if they weren't involved in your like lessons.
mm, mm,
So
mm.
it would be a bit difficult. You could talk to your teachers, but they were usually busy and you
How
didn't
about
really
your
want
form
to.
tutor?
Oh, my phone tutor was great. And then I had
Mm,
another one um, in GCSEs who she
mm,
was amazing. So
mm,
those guys were great. I would talk to them a lot, but again, there were so many students. It's a bit difficult to
mm,
talk to everyone. So it's obviously a flaw in just the fact that there's so many
mm,
people, and people that usually do need help feel like they shouldn't get help or are too shy. Um,
mm.
that was my issue. I just didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to come up and be an issue if I wasn't, you know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, a big part of this podcast is to raise awareness amongst teachers about issues like these, right? So, would you say if you were in, let's say, like a teacher's listening, right, in their class, um, and you didn't seem very willing to talk, or you didn't really approach me or that teacher to get help. What do you think is the best way to encourage you to talk then?
Um, I think just getting to know them better.
Mm,
Obviously, it would be something like they'd come up, they'd be like, "Hey, how you doing? How's the work?" You'd be like, "It's good," or whatever. You'd say nothing. You'd nod, and then if you do that enough, I'd probably be like, "Oh, okay, I can talk to them. This is not just
mm,
them doing it because that's their job. This is them doing this because they care."
yep, yep,
Like, I understand that obviously it's a job. You're tired, and it's very
mm,
difficult to keep track of everything.
yep,
I'm not expecting omnipotent, godly power from
mm,
somebody who's, working so
yeah, yeah,
much. But it's something where it's like, I need a space to feel like I can talk
mm,
without it being a waste of my time, or it's going to result in something I don't want.
yep,
Like for example, there was times where I'd actually been visibly struggling, and the
mm,
first
mm.
thing they did was pull me into an office and talk to me, and I'd just be so scared that I'd just be like, "I'm fine. I'm
Oh,
fine. Like,
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
want to get in trouble. I don't want you to talk to my parents. I don't want to, be treated like I'm, some, you
mm,
know, I can't find the word, just a issue. I don't want to
yeah, yeah,
be
yeah,
seen as
mm,
something that would demand like constant monitoring or
mm,
constant
mm,
checking in. I would like
mm,
checking in,
mm,
but if it's like every single time because you think that I'm actually gonna, you know, let's think drop out or something in the
mm,
middle of
mm.
secondary school, then like that's something where eh, I'm struggling with my words right now, but I'm hoping you sort of get what I mean.
Yeah, from what I hear, it's kind of like regular check-ins to build rapport, right? So that you have that trust with the teacher. And also not waiting until you're, like you said, visibly struggling to actually go a little bit deeper in the conversation. So it seems like you'd rather have an earlier conversation to like when you already feel like okay, things are going wrong, you'd rather tell someone then rather than out later when it becomes really serious and
Yeah,
possibly beyond what you would want your teacher or even parents to know about, right? That's when you would kind of withdraw and not want to talk. If that's,
yeah,
yeah.
because that's especially scary, especially if your parents are the type who care about that sort of thing really much, like a lot. I've had a couple of people
Mm,
who like in secondary they're like, oh my god, I can't get any lower than an A. I'll get into so much
yeah,
trouble.
yeah, yeah,
My
sure,
parents are
sure.
terrifying, and
Mm,
like they'll start trying too hard, get burnout, and the teachers will be like, "Why are you failing? Why are you failing? I'm going to talk to your parents," and they'll just be like,
mm,
"This is exactly what I'm trying to avoid."
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
this is something where you're not being helpful.
Mm,
Secondary, like I would have a couple of mates who had issues. Their parents weren't the best,
mm,
and like if they showed anything in school that would demand the teacher's attention, like
mm,
higher than just the teacher, it'd be like head of year or whatever, they'd
yeah.
immediately try and talk to the parents. And it's like,
Mm,
I understand that's probably a safety like
mm,
measure, but
yeah.
sometimes what can solve it is just giving the student a chance to actually figure out what's wrong and then sort of
Mm, mm,
orient themselves and then continue.
right,
Because
right.
a lot of it was just confusion. Like I would
Mm,
be completely lost because I missed one lesson. I wouldn't
mm,
be able to ask because I'd be scared that
mm,
that's my fault and I should have done this or I should have done
mm,
that. But I wouldn't know that until I was told that, like, oh, you can read here or you can find this resource and then you
mm,
can
mm.
catch up. But it felt like very like I don't know the word, but when someone's like, oh well that's your fault then, oh
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
you should have done, you know, you should know better. It's like I don't know better. I can't be, you know,
Mm,
I
mm,
can't know everything all at once all the
mm.
time.
Yeah, yeah. No,
It was
I can definitely see like if you
yeah,
miss out on a lesson, for example, you kind of feel a bit scared, and also you don't want really bother the teacher every time, right?
yeah,
So I'm guessing from the teacher side, having something for absent pupils to refer to, as simple as like maybe there might be a web page where like there's a quick summary of, okay, maybe there's something that you have to read or some piece of work that you have to do. For you to be able to refer to that would save you a lot of your anxiety of having to go up to a teacher to ask what actually went on in the lesson, and or even asking your classmates about it, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Because I know that not everybody's going to make friends, like especially not in like the first years. Or like if you've moved class or if you've moved to a different like school entirely. If you don't have anyone that you can talk to who's like one of your peers,
Yeah,
and you're completely lost, this is definitely something that COVID affected. Like that was terrible. I did my GCSEs during the COVID era, so that was just dreadful.
I can
Surprised I
imagine.
passed. I was surprised I'm in uni because of that whole fiasco. There was so much issue with getting help because of the fact that they couldn't be there and you couldn't be there. That you just gave up. There was a general air of just giving up. Like you would join a call for a class, nobody would have their microphone on, nobody would have their thing on, nobody was engaging. It was just that get it done, next lesson, get it done, finish the day. But I can understand that was certainly something I can't help with. That was something that affected everybody. But when it came to like outside of COVID, before and after, accessibility for like resources, finding out where you are was very limited in general. It was only after COVID when everything had moved online and all the resources were online that I sort of felt like I could find it myself. I could do it myself. Especially nowadays, like it's the digital age. A lot of kids will have like a laptop or a phone. They would rather use that than go through a book. Especially for revision, like it would be a lot easier to find something like that. For example, in my college, they had obviously a tile. You click on it, it'd have loads of videos from a crash course or some nature documentaries or something relevant to the lesson, and you could watch those like after or in between lessons, and they would like catch you up, fill you in on what stuff you might have missed.
Definitely. I mean, that's very, very helpful. I just have one more question regarding kind of the finding, because like from what I hear from you, it seems like kind of approaching teachers seems a bit of an issue because you seem to have a bit of anxiety over that. Like, from a student's perspective, how would you judge whether a teacher is somewhat like a particular teacher is someone you would trust in telling a little bit more about your struggles, would you say?
Probably somebody who's just casual, because a lot of these people take their job as like an authority figure way too seriously. At the end of the day, you are just a stranger. You teach them, sure, but there's probably nothing past that. So these people, so like students, like they're not going to want to talk to you. They don't know you. You're not their age. You're not going to understand. There's a feeling of lack of understanding, a very big disconnect that I feel like could be easily gapped with just showing personality, showing some sort of like lenience, some casualness. That's not really a word, but like my RPE teacher, she was my later then form teacher. She was amazing. She was so casual that it was baffling. It was like your best friend or like your really cool aunt from across the country. She every lesson we would sit wherever we do whatever we could do whatever we wanted, and every lesson was amazing because it was all girls, but everybody was really just really engaged. The lesson was amazing. It was fun. It wasn't a topic I would have thought would be because it's religion, philosophy, and ethics. So it's not. I mean, it is my thing now, but back then, couldn't care less about it. And then it became like sort of just like a tight little friendship group. Everybody in the class knew each other. Everyone was friends. Everyone could talk to her. She could talk to us. She could come to us. Could have a normal conversation. You could meet her after class, talk about something completely irrelevant, and she'd love it. She'd love talking to you. Sometimes it's not about just the lesson as well. Sometimes it's about like just you, your life, their life, how they're doing. If you build a proper bond and like you just make yourself seem approachable, instead of terrifying and like you're going to throw them into detention for existing, then then it's like, okay, you're awesome. She would do stuff like if we had done well on the lessons, like this is
Yep.
engagement, this is positive reinforcement, you if you'd done really well and you'd gotten certain like the whole class had caught up, everyone's doing well, they can get high marks on the mock tests, they can you can do fun like quizzes and you can answer all that just fine. She'd do stuff like she'd bring in like snacks and like we'd do yoga. It was
Oh,
so
wow.
funny.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
was so funny. But it definitely helped because
yeah.
I felt like if we hadn't had that silliness and
Mm,
like that level of just like that wavelength understanding, then
yeah,
it
yeah,
would have
yeah,
been really difficult to keep
yeah,
going. There's not
yeah,
much
yeah,
that
sure.
motivates you, especially if it's not a
Mm,
subject that you would have cared about. Like the only thing
yeah,
that really motivates me in like things like I don't know maths is
yeah.
the lecturer
Mm.
and is the person that's teaching it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. No, that's a really good point. I think the teacher's showing a little bit of personality, like you said, beyond their kind of teacher persona. I think that really helps students to just know that this actually is a person beyond this subject, right? Right. Before we finish, are you ready to move on to the quick fire questions?
Yeah, go for it.
How did teachers describe you back then? So you could say secondary school, I guess.
Secondary school, I picked up the name Ditzy Mare because I was always just off in the clouds. I wasn't paying attention. I was just, oh, is that what we're learning about? Okay, cool. Or I would be like, I was a bit foolish during English. I was terrible. I
Hmm.
was, very mischievous, I suppose,
Mm,
throwing my
mm.
friend's pencil case across the room, you know. So I
Okay.
was definitely very, I just seen as the out of the loop
Mm,
but can do the work one. Like
okay.
I pass. That's all they care about. They don't
Mm-hmm,
care for
mm-hmm.
me getting a higher grade.
Yep, sure.
Yeah.
What do you think schools or teachers should do less of?
Calling parents, I understand that's a safety
Mm,
concern. Obviously, you want to be like make sure that
mm.
your student is safe at home. You want to,
Yep.
whatever. But sometimes, like I said before, you don't need to. You just need to talk to them. You just need to make sure that they feel like they can do something without
Mm-hmm.
um like
Yeah,
all of that.
sure.
Especially if their parents are scary.
Sure, sure. Any helpful tool or activity that you think really helped you to learn a particular subject?
I think, like I said before, like engagement, positive reinforcement, a
Mm,
reward or something that would
having rewards.
make care. Like, say we're learning history. I don't really like history. No offense to people that like history. It's cool. I think it's a really cool subject, but it's not for me. Say like if I was sat in history and I'd just be absolutely bored, out of my mind, didn't want to do
Mm.
anything, and then he pulled up horrible histories, I would be like, this is the best day of my life.
Oh, I love
Okay,
horrible
I care
histories. Yeah.
now. so, so if you had something like, okay, if everybody gets their work done before this time on the clock, we can watch an
Mm.
episode a bit
Yeah,
of
yeah,
horrible
yeah,
history.
yeah.
It would be even better if it was something like you could only watch so much of horrible histories, and then if you do it the next time, you can continue watching the other half. So then it's like
Interesting.
oh, you
Yeah, yeah.
want to, yeah.
Yeah,
So
interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
sure,
I
sure,
think it would
sure.
be something silly like that.
Okay, brilliant. Do you have a funny, strange, or scary, touching moment that happened in school? I mean, you mentioned a
Oh,
few already.
yeah, I mentioned so many. Sorry about that. Let me think. Um, Scary. There were a few, I think. But I can't name any off the top of my head really.
No, that's okay. No worries.
No,
It's
I
quite
don't
quite a
think that
difficult
it
one.
was
Yeah.
just a little bit all over the place. It was a very bizarre time.
Do you have a question for me? So obviously I've asked you a number of questions already. So it's just a chance for you to ask me a question.
Yeah, sure. I think let's stay on theme with like how would you like know that somebody is struggling if you were
Mm.
teaching class
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually,
and they did talk to you?
yeah, yeah, definitely. In teacher training, there's something called with itness. Like as in you as a teacher, you should be very aware of what's going on around the classroom. And I think like building on what you said about regular check-ins, um, you notice like as a teacher, or you should as a teacher, notice when something is different. Like kind of like a simple example would be, oh, a really bubbly student who suddenly seems like totally not wanting to talk to anyone. Those kind of like subtle things, like you should be very aware of those. And I think those are really good chances for you to check in and maybe go a bit deeper and have those conversations. And I actually I totally agree with what you said earlier. I think it's important to have these conversations earlier and not wait until something's gone wrong. So one thing I like to do is try to get through. So you mentioned earlier, let's say there's 30 in a class, right? But there's also close to 30 days in the month ish, right? So depending on the month. So what I try to do is I try to kind of have a target student um per day. So as in, oh, this day is okay, I'm going to pay particular attention to Alastair. The next day will be, oh, Toby, and so on. And so I can get through the class in a month-ish, right? And I kind of start the cycle again. So at least I know that I'm going to be checking in on them and really focusing on that student for a particular period of time. And just to kind of build a better understanding of the student. And also because I've pretty poor memory. Actually, I do take a few notes as well. So I have a little spreadsheet with all the students in, and I take a few notes for myself, which helps because when students see that you remember bits of things that they told you about before, I think sometimes first of all, they're shocked. But also, I think it helps them to see, okay, this is a person who really cares about me. So yeah, that's what I kind of do or want to do more of as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's amazing that you, again, the remembering something is
Yeah.
something that would make me feel a lot more welcome there. I think if, like, say, I told somebody about, like, I don't know, I'd gone to on a little vacation and I got to see a nature thing, and then like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
next
yeah.
week, like, oh, how was that? How was that?
Yeah, yeah,
I'd be like,
exactly. Yeah.
oh, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
how are
yeah,
you?
yeah.
You know,
Absolutely,
then it gets a
absolutely. Yeah.
conversation. Yeah,
Definitely, definitely. Yeah. Okay. Just one last question before we end. Were there any teachers? I mean, again, you've mentioned your PE teacher, but were there any teachers who you remember vividly for good or bad reasons? And for bad reasons, you don't need to mention their names.
yeah, yeah. I'm not going to do that. But my physics teacher was the most evil woman on earth. I have
Oh,
to admit.
wow.
Oh my
This is
god.
your time to,
Yes.
yeah, just
Oh my
let it
god.
out.
Dreadful. I love physics, right? It's a very interesting topic, but it was completely ruined for me because I think that
Oh.
goes for a lot of people. Bad teachers ruin your favorite subjects,
Mm.
Um, but
Give us a quick bullet point summary of all the bad things that she did.
yeah, there was a lot of no talking, no doing anything. You can't move your chair, you can't sit with anybody, you're not allowed to
Mm.
engage with anyone. If you went up to her, it felt like you were being told off, even though you were the
Mm.
one that started the conversation.
Mm.
Um, she always brought up her own personal issues as well, which is, I understand you can have your own issues, but I think with a classroom of children, it's probably
Mm.
not a very good idea.
Mm.
Especially when it's something really heavy topic. It's always like, oh, my husband's going into surgery and this is making you so
Mm.
stressed and you shouldn't be doing this. It's all your fault. It was like,
Okay.
this
Mm.
isn't appropriate. I
Bit
mean,
strange.
even
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
I didn't know. I
Mm.
was just like, oh, shit, why? Just
Mm.
horrible. And my friend, for example, there was one lesson that I remember distinctly where my friend was crying, and I was
Mm.
like, "Hey, can we go to the nurse? She's crying. She doesn't understand anything. I'll just take her and come back." And she was like, "No, it's your fault that you don't understand anything and that you're like
Mm.
doing terribly and whatever." And I was just
Definitely
like,
not
"You can't
nice
say
things to
that. You
say to
can't do that."
students. Yeah.
Yeah, I argued with her and it got really quite, I got thrown in detention. I was just like, you know what, I'm going to take the detention with pride and glory. I want to have that on my report card as like a gold medal of honor because I was just arguing with her. I was like, let my friend go to the nurse. You can throw me in detention, but if you're going to yell at her for not knowing anything, then that's your responsibility for her to know stuff.
Whilst ensuring that education is accessible in terms of the facilities in the classroom and attending to special education needs, Alastair also highlighted the importance of teachers making their classrooms more inclusive and inviting. What Alastair hoped for is simply teachers who showed a bit of personality beyond the teacher persona. Students need to feel like their teacher is someone they can trust and speak to beyond the subject matter. I hope you enjoyed listening to Alastair's extraordinary story, and please do join us again next time on Ordinary Teachers and Students.